The decade of 2010 has come to a close, and with that comes a long look back at a lot of great games. And I mean a lot of great games. The 2010s didn't play around this entire decade with hit after hit. And I know a lot of people said this decade doesn't match the golden era of the old games, but I feel there was a lot of spark of great things just deep inside this era of gaming. So today, I'm going to be giving my list of the top 10 games of the decade. Along with this is my list of worst games of the decade. So we've got a lot of things to discuss in here, and what my picks are and different things. So let's not waste any time. Let's begin the Gaming with Class Games of the Decade definitive list. First on the docket is the top 10 games of the decade. This was a very, very hard list to put together because there's been so many incredible games that have come out the past 10 years. But I think I picked for me what I felt personally were my favorite games I played across the 10 years. So before I begin on it, I want to give a few honorable mentions of games that were great but just didn't make my list. The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds. This game right here was one that I really, really enjoyed. I'm a very, very big fan of the Zelda series, and I'm a very big Zelda bias. Like it's one of my favorite video game franchises of all time. I've played every single game in the series, and whenever it comes to Zelda, I always will play it no matter what. And just saying, oh, Link Between Worlds is going to be a spiritual sequel to Link to the Past. I was there. Link to the Past is one of my all-time favorite games of all time. So they had me right there. And when I finally got a chance to play it, it really brought a lot of fresh new things, at least to the Zelda series, with the new mechanics at play and a lot of changing the norm of the series. And I thought all of it worked. It was a fantastic game. And I still play it to this day, and it still holds up remarkably well. Fury. This game came completely out of nowhere. This was a game that I heard about a little bit when it released, because I had heard a lot of things of kind of journalists talking about it, saying it's too hard and this and that, and it kind of piqued my interest, and I finally got it. It blew me away. Like, it's pretty much a boss rush game. You have these many bosses you have to fight and get through in a gauntlet style just afterwards, like back to back to back. And it works so well. All the bosses are perfectly just constructed and designed in all their patterns. And it's one of those games where I know for many people they felt it was too hard, but really it's all in learning the patterns of all the bosses. Like once you have the patterns, you have the game. Like it's right there. And I just loved it. The look of it, the soundtrack, the gameplay, it all worked perfectly. And it was one of like the surprise games for me of this decade. I played it numerous times. I made sure to get a physical copy of it. Like, no, I have it digital. I want this physical. I want this on my shelf. This game is worthy of it, and I am proud to have that Fury copy on my shelf. Kingdom Hearts 3. Now this is probably a very big surprise to a lot of people that Kingdom Hearts 3 made it into my honorable mentions, because I loved this game. This game was in my top 10 list of 2019. I thought it was a great game. Like, honestly, I know this game's got a lot of kind of different mixed opinions for a lot of people, but I went into it, I loved it. It was exactly what I wanted and more. Now, I know for some, it's probably the story is really going to divide them. For me, I felt the story for myself, I thought it was a nice conclusion to the story that they were telling for this part of the saga. And everything in it, I thought was fantastic. The gameplay was still exactly what I wanted from Kingdom Hearts. The Yoko Shimomura soundtrack was exactly what I wanted. And it all worked. Like, I felt there was no really weak component in the game. Maybe some content things, but we've seen now with the new DLC that's coming out that it's really adding in a lot of extra content. It's really upping the game to like a final mix level. But yeah, Kingdom Hearts 3 was fantastic. While it didn't make my top 10 of the decade, it was a fantastic game that I was very happy to have played, and I would say the wait was absolutely worth it. So with those out of the way, it is now time to finally dive into the top 10 games of the decade. Number 10, 3D Dot Game Heroes. Now, I'm sure to a lot of people, you're probably wondering, A, what is this game? And B, why would you put 3D Dot Game Heroes on a top 10 games of the decade list? And honestly, it's that I really love 3D Dot Game Heroes. This is a game that I've brought up numerous times across videos and channels and streams, because it's one of these games that no one ever really talks about, and it's such a cool little game. It came out pretty early on in this decade, and it was kind of a hidden gem of the PlayStation 3. I felt like it came out and like no one knew. Like when I got the game, if I hadn't pre-ordered it, I wouldn't have had a copy, because my GameStop only got one copy of the game in. It was just me. It was one of those things where it's like, man, what happened? Like there was no advertising for it. I feel like it just went under the radar, and it could have been for a lot of reasons. For some, it's like, for some it was probably the look of the game, which is more cube, like vector style graphics, and I know for some also could have fallen into the gameplay, where the game doesn't hide it at all. It really is a love letter to The Legend of Zelda. It copies a lot of different things, and you see a lot of references to Zelda and other retro video games of the time. And honestly, there's a lot of Zelda clones out there. 3D Dot Game Heroes really did it right. And it's one of the ones I say, man, like it's just straight up a really good game. It follows the Zelda formula, but man, it's good. And it's one I always recommend to people. I say, hey, if you're looking for a nice, cool little game that's like a hidden gem, 3D Dot Game Heroes. It was unfortunately delisted from the PlayStation 3 store, so get a physical copy. They thankfully are not expensive, because no one's going for it, which is better for you, because that means you can get a copy, and it's absolutely worth playing. Like, trust me, it is a very fun game, and I think you will enjoy it if you try it out. Number 9, Thumper. This was a game where when I went into it, I knew, okay, this game is probably going to be awesome. And then when I finally played it, it exceeded my expectations and like went up to like 100. This game is intense, and they describe it as a rhythm hell music game where you're having to time your actions to beats that come on screen and make your way through these levels, fighting these really just dark bosses and getting through these really just dark environments. On paper, it probably sounds, oh, it's just probably like a little boring game, but when you play it, it's so intense, and it just really sucks you in. And really, the thing that pushes Thumper into the like other gear is the VR mode. Thumper, I played the entire game in VR, and it was a life-changing thing. This game is on a whole different level when you play it in VR. I played it, and I've tried to play it just on a standard TV, and it's still good. Don't get me wrong, but playing it in VR is a whole other game. Just having the entire game envelop around you, and with good headphones on, and all you get is the game around you, and you're just locked in. It's the only game in VR where every time I play it, I have to tell people, hey, don't mess with me right now, because I'm locked in. I zone out. Most other VR games I play, I generally always have a sense of where I am and everything else. With Thumper, I get lost into it with the music and just the gameplay, and it all works. Like, it is still a really intense game. It's a game where even after I'm playing it, I'm always like sweating a little, or my palms are a little sweaty, just because it really gets you, because like the music and everything else that's going on in the background really just adds to it. And it was such a surprise hit for me. It was, for 2016, a lot of great games came out, but honestly, Thumper was one that was at the top of my list. it was such a surprise game for me that it just blew me away. And I still love like recommending this game to people because it's on another level. Number 8, PT, Silent Hills. This game, I know for some it's like, well, how is PT on here? This game never released. And it's really due to the fact that PT, honestly, despite just being a teaser, really was something special. It, to me, is still to this day one of the scariest games that I've ever played. I've played a lot of scary games over the years. I remember Silent Hill really got me as a kid. Resident Evil really got me. Clock Tower, a few moments got me, but nothing has really gotten on the level of PT. I played PT the day it was announced. Within 20 minutes of them saying PT is able to play now, play the teaser, I got on it. And since then, even though I've played it numerous times, it still surprises me. It still gives me just this feeling of unease, and I'm always on edge playing PT, even though I know what's gonna happen. But there's just something about it. It is such a well-crafted game, and it does so little but so much at the same time. And it's really makes me sad that we will never see what was gonna happen of Silent Hills, because if this teaser is any sign of what we were gonna see in the full game, that game would have been terrifying. I still cannot play PT at night. I have to play it in the day, like little frightened child, because it's still a little too much. And honestly, that's the sign of a good, like, scary game. You can play it in the day and it's still effective. And I don't know what Kojima did, but all cylinders worked with it. And honestly, it's such a special game, and I will still always try to get people to play it. If they've never played it, I will sit them down and say, hey, you need to play this, because honestly, I think everyone needs to. Like, it's a shame that it is now gone from the PlayStation Store, and at some point inevitably in the future it'll be lost to time unless it can just somehow get saved. But it really was a remarkable thing. And it's just one of those sad just stories of just something that never is going to keep going. Number 7, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. Now this game, I've mentioned this one, like PT and a few others, I've mentioned it a lot over the years. And honestly, Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze is a fantastic platformer. Retro Studios really came out and excelled on everything they put together with Donkey Kong Country Returns. And in regards of a Donkey Kong Country game, it is honestly perfect. Now, does it stand up to the Super Nintendo games? I will still obviously favor those. Those are timeless classics. But Tropical Freeze is so good on its own and for what it does that it honestly easily gets a spot on my list. The music, David Wise just excels. There are so many just perfect tracks in this game that easily amplify everything that's happening in the level. And the level design in this game and the worlds that they put together are some of the series' best. Like, there's one level in particular called Grassland Groove, and this track is featured on one of my favorite levels of the entire game. And it's this all-encompassing level which has this very African tribal feel to it. And every time you progress further in the level, the song dynamically changes and it fits whatever you're doing. And it's just such a great level, and it really looks like Retro Studios was having fun with this, everything they were doing in this game, because in terms of level design, it is honestly like just perfect. This to me was, when this came out, I was like, this is what platformers need to like be next to now. There are a lot of platformers coming out that while they were really good, there were just certain things about it felt like they were just kind of phoning it in. And Tropical Freeze comes out and just shows them what it should be. And I could go on and on about this game with a lot of different things. All I will say is absolutely play this game. It is a phenomenal platformer, and it's on the Switch. If you have a Switch, it's a no-brainer. Pick this game up. Like, don't listen to that GameSpot review that said I gave it a 6 and said it was too difficult and it wasn't that good. Like, play it for yourself, give it a try, and I think you will enjoy it. Number 6, Super Mario Maker. Now, Mario Maker, it was a no-brainer game. It's one I'm even surprised it took Nintendo so long to do, because the thought of, hey, what if we released a game where you make your own Mario levels? Like, it just sounds like an idea that they would have had it done. But thankfully, when the Wii U came out, they brought it, and it was the perfect game. Because for growing up, I would always have kind of these dreams of, what if I made a Mario level or like a Mario game? And I would write on these like little just sketch pads in school or whatever on back of paper. I would like make up makeshift Mario levels. And just being able to now at this point come back and say, oh, I can now make these levels I was thinking of as a kid. It was pretty awesome. And I loved it. Like, I felt everybody came out of the woodwork for that game, just in terms of developers and people, and just it brought people to like just make really, really good Mario levels. Now that, of course, you're gonna have your Kaizo levels that are ridiculous, but that's gonna be expected. I mean, like, you should know already. People have mastered Mario. They're gonna make those crazy levels, and I'm gonna play them too. But I don't know, I just felt like it got everybody, and it was one of my most played games on the Wii U, and it was the one that I would tell people, hey, you may not like the Wii U, but it's got some big hit games, and I would always bring up Mario Maker first, because I felt that game was the perfect example of what the Wii U needed more of. Games like that, where it utilizes the gamepad in a great way, but it also just is a great game on its own. Even if you don't make levels, Mario Maker is easily worth a buy, because you just have unlimited Mario levels you can make and play. And there's so many just good ones. Of course, there's bad ones there, but like it was just a great thing to see, and I was very happy for it. And honestly, like it worked so well. I hope Nintendo comes and says, you know what, we should do this for like Zelda. Hey, a Zelda maker? Oh, sign me up. Like, whenever if they ever did that, that's a day zero purchase. Like, that's a no-brainer easily for me. But yeah, getting back to the point, Mario Maker really was an awesome title. That's all I have to say. Number 5, Xenoblade Chronicles. This was the surprise RPG for me, because I didn't hear too much about it leading into it, but it was after the game came out, I started hearing a lot of like really, really positive things about it, and it really got on my intrigue list. And then when I finally did try to go get the game, GameStop decided to say, oh, well, because we have the game exclusively only at the GameStop, we're going to charge you about, $90 a copy. And for a long time, I couldn't get a hold of it. So it was just burning me. Just like, I want to play this game so bad. And I couldn't, because I refused to pay GameStop's just asinine price increase. So it took a long time. And it wasn't until 2015 when I finally got a chance to play Xenoblade Chronicles. And it was absolutely worth the wait. This game was not just a surprise hit, it hit me by surprise. There are so many moments where I stopped and just was like, this is ridiculous. And it's one of the moments I would say this top decade is one of my favorite gaming moments. When you first enter the main big hub world of the game, when the game truly starts, when you hit Gower Plains, and when you walk around that corner and you hear the Gower Plains music just slowly fade in, and you see just the scope of the entire level. It blew me away. And that is the thing that I love with Xenoblade Chronicles. It's the scope of everything. It is on such a small system, the Wii, but the scope is so huge and is more ambitious than you would expect for the Wii. And it is just an amazing game. With the story is just really captivating and gripping. And all the characters, even the support cast, are all great. And the side quests in the game, I felt even the side quests, some of it is the general side quest you get in a lot of RPGs, but a lot of the side quests sometimes are really good. It had a lot of depth to them. Like it was a great game in all fronts. And I'm so happy the game is getting a definitive edition for the Switch, because now that means a brand new audience will get a chance to play this game. And that's really what I hope, is that with this new version, people finally play this game. Because before, you couldn't play the game, I'd understand, because I wouldn't want to spend $90 on it. As much as I love it, well, after playing it, I was like, okay, I would have spent $90 on it. But for most regular people, they're not going to. And with Shulk also being in Smash, it brought a lot of newfound respect for the characters. Like, oh, Shulk, I want to see what his game's about. So I really hope people play Xenoblade Chronicles. It is one of my favorite games, and I hope you like it too. Especially if you're a fan of RPG games, it's a no-brainer. Number 4, Persona 5. Oh, where to begin with Persona 5? This game it's just a stylish game. It's one of the most beautiful looking just games, and everything about it just looks so appealing. It doesn't even have to do anything big, but it's just like, man, that's really cool. But even besides that, like, keeping on with just the aesthetic of the entire game, because the aesthetic of it is really cool. The story, to me, is always what I love about a Persona game. And I thought Persona 5 story really knocked it out of the park. And I am of the very rare opinion, because when this game first came out, after a few months, there was a lot of debates of which is better, Persona 4 or Persona 5, and there's always the people who sadly skip Persona 3 for some reason, or 1 and 2 on the PlayStation, which those are cool. But it was the debate of 4 and 5, and honestly, I pick 5. I love 4, don't get me wrong. 4 is a great game. It was a fantastic close for me of the PlayStation 2, and I really enjoyed it. But Persona 5 for me, I felt like Atlus really knocked it out of the park with everything in there. The gameplay, like a lot of the changes they made just for quality of life features to the game, and everything else. Like the Persona games always just are so huge in it, and it's just that you get so engrossed in the characters and the story because you spend so long on it. Like a standard Persona 5 playthrough is probably going to be 100 or so hours, and that's just going through the game at a nice pace and not speeding up or not slowing down. That's not doing everything. And throughout those 100 hours, like by the end, I was like, man, I'm kind of hitting me hard. It's like I was kind of sad. I was like, oh, it's over, because you're at it so long. But I really just loved that game, just in the gameplay, the systems outside of the gameplay, and the music. The music alone is what makes Persona 5 such a great game. The soundtrack is incredible. There are so many amazing tracks, and it's why when it came to Smash, I was like, oh, it's gonna have the best music of the entire game. And every time, like, oh, I want to throw down on that Smash, on that Persona stage, because it's got those songs, and it's just it drives everything. And that's really the music drives Persona 5 so hard, and just accelerates everything else and makes everything else like flourish so much well. Like, I played 100 hours, I never got tired of the battle theme. Like, every time Last Surprise hit, and it hit in like that chorus, I always got pumped. There was not a moment where I was like, oh, I wish I could just mute this or turn it off. I was like, no, let me turn it up it never disappointed me. It really was worth the long wait, because like when it was first revealed, it was like 2012, and I was like, oh man, oh nice, Persona 5's coming out soon. And then cut to like 2017 when it finally did come, and it's like, oh, but it was absolutely worth the wait, and I can't wait to play it again. Number 3, Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2. Now, I'm sure to many it's probably weird that I put 1 and 2 on the same spot. It's like, well, you're kind of breaking the list because you just put 2 games in a single one, but really it's that I was contemplating for a long time like putting both in like single numbers, but it's like, nah, I need to put them both on the same, because it's really between either 1 or 2. Now, to start off with Red Dead Redemption 1, it was such a great start to this decade of gaming. It came out of nowhere, and it really was the start of Rockstar going, hey, we've tackled a lot of satirical and humorous games in the past with Grand Theft Auto and Bully, and really with Grand Theft Auto 4, it was a change in the series where now you're seeing more serious storytelling, where Grand Theft Auto 4 is very serious a lot of times. And so transitioning into Red Dead Redemption, you really see them now in a fully serious type game. And the story is really what drives every single thing in that game. John Marston is character of the decade. That game was gripping from start to finish. And for good reason, that game always is brought up as like best lists, and like it's no hyperbole. Like it is fantastic, and to me, one of the greatest moments probably of this decade, like of gaming moments, is that first ride into Mexico and the song "Far Away" slowly starts playing. It was such just a great moment, and set up so much of just. That's when you knew this game was something else. Like Rockstar really just came out and pushed everything, and it was amazing. And to also briefly touch on Red Dead Redemption 2, which came out last year, it was another one where it's like it had a lot of expectations, because Red Dead Redemption 1 was like a 10 out of 10 game, and for me going into it, I was like, hopefully it's good. And it just the same as number 1, I loved it. I was into the story from start to finish, and I played several hours of that thing, and like went like days on it. And even by the end, like when the ending finally hit, I was like, oh, I don't know what to do. It just pushed everything else that worked with Red Dead Redemption 1 and excelled even more. It was, oh my god, it's an incredible game. And I know there are also a lot of complaints about it with a lot of the gameplay things of how it's a very cumbersome, and it's a little too realistic in a lot of its movements. But that's the stuff that really made that game just so crazy, because it adds to the immersion of everything else with the characters and the gameplay. And you see that a lot also in just all the systems at play that work with that game. Like they have so many different things just going on, and it's such a technical game, like on a gameplay and development standpoint, it's nuts. And Rockstar Games really this decade has showed that they can still push a lot of things, and that they are always going to be kind of the kings of the industry. Because when their games come out, it destroys. And I don't know what Rockstar have in store for the future right now, but whatever it is, I'm looking forward to it. Red Dead Redemption was and still is a fantastic series.
Open your eyes.
Number 2, The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. Now, getting back to the Zelda bias I mentioned earlier, you should have known Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild was going to be this low on my list. Like I said earlier, I am a huge fan of the Legend of Zelda series, and this game was very, very different from previous Zelda games, and their commitment to say, hey, we're going to go back to what the series was originally going to be, just you as an adventurer exploring this land, and really that exploration is key. And Breath of the Wild really did get to that and brought back really what it felt like for me playing those first few Zelda games, because it really was a thing of, wait, I'm lost. Where do I go? And you're just really getting enveloped in this huge open world. And I got exactly that from Breath of the Wild, and I wasn't disappointed. I did a very long review on it a few years ago, kind of going into what I liked about it. So if you want more of a longer discussion, you can go see that. But really, Breath of the Wild excelled in a lot of different things. The story, well, very different in how they handled it. I feel the story was very hidden in a way. You had to really go out and explore to get remnants of the story. And unlike traditional Zelda games where you're kind of following along the story, it's more you have to really go and find the story yourself. And what really made that game was the gameplay. The gameplay was king in that game. It had such a just huge element of just trying things out and seeing what worked, because it had so many different things working. It's like, oh, I wonder if I do this, if I put a bomb on this, what's gonna happen? Oh, it did this. Oh, what if I swing this tree and have it stop? What it was gonna do? Oh, it's gonna have me fly. Like, it was just such a big experimentation like game, and there's so much to it. Like, the month that game came out, there was so much cool stuff happening with all these different like people just telling their experiences with the game, saying, oh, I went to this section of the map and I found this, or oh, I did this and I did that, or oh, you can do this. Like, it's one of my favorite things kind of that I love in games, when like a game can connect everybody and everybody's all in like the same thing of like exploring and finding out things for themselves. Like, that is one of my favorite things in gaming, and Breath of the Wild really gave me the sense of that, and just the scope and just what it did inside and outside of the game. And I really loved it. When I reviewed the game, I gave it a 9 out of 10, which is a great score. It is a great score. But looking back onto it now, and after playing it another time on the Switch now, I think I can officially move my score to the game to a 10 out of 10. I think this game was phenomenal. It was a great new step in the Zelda franchise, and I can't wait to see what they have in store for Breath of the Wild 2. Like, more of this, more of the same stuff, I am all there. Like, Legend of Zelda, you have never let me down. And my number one game of the decade is... The Last of Us. Now, this game, I knew from the very beginning that this was going to be my number one spot for game of the decade. Last of Us really... There are very few games that have like got me on such a level that Last of Us has. And I've talked a bit about like games really engrossing me into the story and the characters and just everything else with it. And I feel like Last of Us got me in that, but like times 10. It really sucked me into like the world of that game and the characters, and really getting me into truly caring about the characters. And to a point where when I first played the game, I got it day one. I played for about 6 hours straight, and I was so sucked into the game that I didn't even realize that when I had stopped playing, I was completely in the dark in my room. I forgot to turn the lights on. No game to this day has ever given me that same thing that Last of Us has, where it's really completely gotten me into it. And it's all really to Naughty Dog's work and the amazing team that worked on that game. They put so much into it, and it still remains to be one of my favorite games. I've played it many times at this point. on a lot of the difficulties and have played it back to front like multiple times. And it does get brought up a lot that, oh, well, it's nothing too spectacular. It's just a third-person shooter game. But I feel for what it does, like, to me, like that, like for me, I don't think it really bothers me. Like it's still really fun in the gameplay department and all of the survival aspects and how you have to kind of watch your bullets and everything else. I felt it all really worked, and the soundtrack by Gustavo is just really just atmospheric and really sets the tone of everything that happens in that game. And honestly, the acting too. Like, I know for a long time Troy Baker, who was and still is in every single video game out there, it was like, oh, Troy Baker, he's probably gonna do the same role he's probably done. But there was so much depth that he put into the role of Joel, and even to a lot of other people who were in this game, like they put so much into the roles, into those characters, that you really were with them all the way to the end. Like I still remember the moment I was at a certain point at the end of the game, and I was super into the game. Like my heart rate was increased. I was like on the edge of my seat, and I mean that literal. Like not in a like, oh, at the edge of my seat. Like I literally was. I was leaned into it, like mouth open. I was so into the game, and it got me just into it. And really, like, no game has got me like that. Well, I've yet to see what the future is going to lay for the Last of Us series, as Last of Us 2 is not out yet. And I don't know if it's going to be on the same level as NumberOne, or is it going to be better? I can't say for sure. All I will say is, like, for Last of Us 1, it was a remarkable game. And I am happy that I had a chance to play it. It really was something, and it's still one of the games that I recommend people with PlayStation 4s get. It's a must-play title. And with that was my list of the top 10 games of the decade. Not a bad list, honestly. There were a lot of great games. This past 10 years has been pretty fantastic. And I'm sure my list is going to differ very much from whatever your list is going to be. But I do like that, though. That means that there's a lot of games out there that are favorites of others that maybe aren't to mine, but I like that. And that's what I love about gaming, is that there's so many options for everybody. Everybody's favorites are going to differ from person to person. I always really like that. So with that being said, that is going to conclude this first part. Join me for the next one when I will go over my worst games of the decade. So I will not be speaking as positive as I have been in this video. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next year. Goodbye, 2010s. You've been great.